The purpose of these videos is not to give you cheat sheets or shortcuts to get to the end result of passing the exam, but rather to try to kind of draw your attention to building confidence on everything you're doing every day that you will use in the future as a surgeon in the decisions that you're going to make in treating patients, both in the orthopedic side and the trauma side. So for this very brief video, the few concepts of these as well is that they're not going to be very long videos. I don't believe that people have a huge amount of time to sit down and just decide to watch a video for this long. The shorts that we're covering on Instagram are simply to give you somewhere in the region of 90 to 120 seconds of information, and we'll build on that as the series goes. But ultimately for these videos, I want to cover things in a maximum of about 20 slides and also in a maximum of 15 minutes. So if you are on a break between cases, at least you can look at something in between those as you see fit and as you wish. So the purpose of this first one is to give you a brief overview of what to expect for the future videos. I'm very open for people to contact me directly and tell me, we found this useful, we didn't find this useful, or we would like for you to cover a certain topic, or also to cover certain things in a particular manner. So I want these to be as interactive as possible, with the allowance of these being virtual and obviously being pre-recorded. But also I want people to contact me and say, look, what you did on that video didn't really suit what we're trying to do. Can you improve on X, Y, Z? I'm very open to that, and I would encourage you, because the more that we build on this and the more that I realize what you want, the better it is for everybody overall. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to cover the very basic rundown on what the Viva stations are. And I know let's say some of you are probably going to be very well versed in this and you'll have been practicing this, but for some of us who would have been early on in the stages, I didn't understand what this involved. So for your Viva station, I sat my exam in Cardiff in November 23, and the way that it was run was in one of the local hotels, and one of the function rooms had 4 rows of tables. Each row was either your trauma, basic science, adult path, or children and hands, and then you covered these for 30 minutes each. I wasn't told prior to this that you don't go 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, and so on. You actually do one stream, and then you have a 10 or 15 minute break. And of course, you need this for the examiners as well, for refreshments, toilet breaks. There's coffee and tea outside in the foyer, and it gives you a chance just to regroup yourself and to say, look, I've done basic science, so now I know that these are not going to be what I'm covering. You're told well in advance what you're covering and in what order, what day you're being examined on, and what time you're going. So you'll know the order you go in. So it'll either be in the order as you see, or some combination of this. 5 minutes per question, 6 questions in total, giving you 30 minutes per station. So what you'll find is that there are 2 examiners at each table. You are generally speaking to one examiner. You're not speaking to both directly. However, I would highly encourage that you do focus on both. Look at the body language, look at the eye contact. Really just show how enthusiastic you are about this. You've chosen this specialty for a reason, and you're good at it. You've gotten to this stage. Your peers obviously think that you're good enough to sit the exam. Get stuck into it and get excited about the topic you're covering. There is a break between the streams, as I said, and the bell signals a change in question or the end of the station. And when that bell goes, if they're using an iPad, the iPad turns around, you are finished that section, you move on to the next one. What I was given on my basic science side of things was plating concepts, theatre environment, trial design, and also material properties and failure. And we're going to go through each of these very briefly just to show you what to look for. Like I said at the start of the video, this is not something that I want you to look at, sit down and memorize what's on this. This is not an all-encompassing video. This is purely covering topics and to show you what type of questions you could be asked and encouraging you to think outside the box. So for the very first one, as I've said, it's plating concepts and fixation methods. And the prompt that I was given for this was the following picture. So for this boy, I was just simply given a picture of a distal radius volar locking plate. And I was asked, what is this? And it gives you an option to talk about the plate, what you know, and how you would use it. And we'll cover stuff in future videos of how you would structure a question. But what I want you to be aware of is this is simply the prop. It doesn't mean that the examiners are limited to only talking about locking plates or only talking about distal radius fixation. They might say, what else can this be used for? Well, it can be used for an osteotomy in a malunion. What types of fixations are you aware of? Well, there's non-locking, there's locking, there's bridging, there's neutralization plating, and they were exactly the questions I was asked. What other types of platings are you aware of? They then asked me, how do these fail? And with an internal X-fix, which is what a locking plate is, it fails in entirety. The whole construct has to pull out because these are all fixed angle constructs, allowing for the variable angle at the distal end. It is still locked in, and once locked, it's a fixed angle device. So like an X-fix, it fails in entirety. As we've touched on a lot of these already in the little rundown there, the thinking outside the box is the big thing. Look at different things that you have in theatre and just turn to a colleague, especially if you're paired with them for the exam for your own preparation. It's quite useful, and talk about it for 90 seconds. This is a diathermy, how it works. This is a Rotem machine, how does that work? This is a bear hugger, this is an X-ray machine, it's a C-arm, it's a mini C-arm, how do they work? We use these on a day-to-day basis, and they're very basic concepts. They're not difficult to talk about, let's say, in general colloquial terms, but if you were asked to talk about it in 5 minutes and ask some questions, could you do it? And just start practicing this quite early on. The next part that I was given was relating to a theatre environment and how this works in general. And this is literally the picture I was given, and they just said, what's this? So this is a bear hugger, and a bear hugger is a protected term by 3M as a company, but also it's an instrument used in theatre to regulate the heat of the patient. And then the question that I was asked was, the bear hugger is not working, what else can you do? So look around theatre and be aware that in some hospitals you have the heating blankets that are under the patient. You also have very literal basic blankets. You also have visceral or internal heating with, let's say, warmed irrigation fluid, which can be used as well. And just talk about how else you can manage this, and of course the environment and the air temperature itself. They then moved on and asked me, how would you monitor it? So you can speak to the anaesthetist, you can do internal monitoring with the use of a catheter thermometer, one through a nasogastric tube, you can do tympanic or skin temperature as well. They then moved on to stuff like, what would you do in an elective case that you are doing for a revision periprosthetic joint infection for a second stage, and you don't have a bear hugger and the temperature is off? Would you proceed, was the first question, and also then was the justification of whether I would or wouldn't. And also then they went into the concepts of coagulopathy and hypothermia and the implication of this. So you can see that with one simple picture, they actually expanded into a huge broad range of stuff that you can control depending on how you answer the questions as you go ahead. Theatre, heating, cooling, monitoring, the standards you're trying to achieve, and the target values was a very brief way that I learned these myself as well. But look, I want you to look at these in a simple manner that suits you. You'll see on some of my Instagram videos where we talk about learning methods, and no two people learn the exact same way. Figure out what works for you. Do these videos work? Do, let's say, audiobooks and other things work as well? Figure out what works for you and then capitalize on that. The next part that I got was a trial design, and they literally asked me, how would you design a trial? Talk to us about the various concepts of what make a good trial and what would you do if you had the choice to do this. We won't labour on this. There's loads of papers out there that you can look at. This is one screen grab that I've taken, which is a little bit dated now at 2010. There are loads of them on PubMed as well, just for you to go into Stat Pearls, or a few in 2017 had a few very, very good papers as well. Read up on them, look at the different types of styles. They are not asking you the levels of evidence. They're asking you for a trial. So back to the same thing, answer the question you're asked, not the question you want to be asked or the question that you think you've been asked. Make sure that you're aware of the end point of what they're asking you as well. The last part then was a basic sciences part, and this one can throw people quite a bit with the material and properties of the basic sciences station rather. So I was given one where a patient had Paget's disease, had an atypical femoral fracture that was nailed, and then had a broken nail. So they gave me this picture, and then they proceeded with, now not this exact picture, but a very similar one, where they showed me one where the actual plate, or the nail itself rather, was broken. Now, you might think this is going into a bit of complexity and we're not really sure where this is leading and how would you go into this, but also remember, any one of the following pictures could be used for the exact same question. And all of these are boiling down to fatigue failure and the SN curve, and that's what they're working on. And on a very well-known video, or let's say revision resource that you'll find online as well, said that the props will change, but the questions will remain the same. So the props here are all different to an extent. You've got nails and you've got plates and you've got fatigue failure of all of them. So what I want you to be aware of is that the props will change, but the actual question will remain the same. So what you're looking for then is an SN curve. You'll have paper in front of you, and then be very confident to just grab onto the paper and start drawing it. Now, I remember I practiced what I thought, at least at the time, were very nicely drawn, very properly measured pictures. When you're in the exam, you're scribbling like a toddler, and you'll be lucky if it looks like any form of a curve. But just make sure you keep the things basic. Draw your axes, draw your labels, make sure you're aware of what you're saying, and also then draw out the pictures in some form of a coherent manner. So I hope that you found some part of this anyway useful, and I'm very keen for you to contact me and let me know what you think of this as well. Follow me on Instagram and also on TikTok as well, just to follow on the other videos that we'll be doing, and hopefully this series will grow into something that's useful. I want it to be readily available, I want it to be free, and I want it to be tailored to what you as exam goers and as senior trainees are looking for, and just ultimately to build into this kind of more of a conversational concept of revision. It shouldn't be something where we're only working on our revision from ST6 into 7, all of this that we're learning from ST3, but we need some direction, and I certainly needed direction when I was at that stage. So I look forward to catching up with you on the future videos, and hopefully this will grow into something that might be some way useful to yourself, your colleagues, and the future generation behind us to come.